Content for devs. The world beyond programming.
Welcome in the Content for Dev podcast, another episode when together with Federico. Today we will talk with Ayush Newatia from London. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right.
And today we will talk about publishing and writing books for developers, because Ayush is an author of pretty fascinating and quite impressive in terms of size book as well. So today we will talk a little bit around that. But before we start, Ayush, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, thanks for having me on the show. It's really cool to talk to you guys. So I'm a freelance Ruby and Rails developer. I live just outside London. And I wrote a book which we're going to dive into a bit more deeply through the rest of the conversation about Rails and Hotwire. But for work, I just do like Rails development, whatever I can needed to do the job really. I'm also on the core team of the Bridgetown open source project. So if you've not heard of Bridgetown, it started life as a fork of Jekyll, but it's kind of taken on a life of its own now, and we call it a progressive site generator, not just a static site generator. So if you're doing something more like more content driven or something that's more static than like the full, like something that needs more static work than like a database driven website, I'd recommend you check out Bridgetown.
I've actually used Bridgetown.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, it's absolutely great.
Great. That's awesome to hear. And my background is actually in mobile development. I was an iOS and Android developer for a number of years, and I just switched to Rails in 2020, and I've been doing web app development ever since, because pretty much just got fed up with the walled garden of mobile apps, and I thought web sounds more fun.
And do you still think it is more fun after those 2 years of engagement?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just the freedom that you have on web. Like it can be the stupidest idea in the world, but you can get it out on the internet just because it's open, right? You just buy a domain name and publish whatever you want just for fun. You can't always do that on mobile because Apple or Google don't think your app is good enough or whatever, then you're not getting on their store. Like a friend of mine and I made the world's most stupid iOS app a few years ago. It was literally just pressing a button. You had to press a button every day and build a streak. It was monumentally stupid, but it was a good laugh, and Apple didn't approve it because they thought it didn't do enough. And it's fine. It was a complete waste of time, but it was just a bit of fun. And if it was on the web, we could have published it because it was an app. We were at Apple's mercy, really. They didn't want to publish it. There's nothing we could do about it. So I like that freedom that you have on web.
Oh, definitely there is a lot of freedom. And regarding to Bridgetown, I also want to add a few words on this. I'm going to rewrite my Hanami mastery from Next.js to Bridgetown relatively soon, possibly this year. So super happy that you are engaged to this project. This is awesome. And I'm super glad that you decided to appear on our show, because we barely starting, and this is a great honor to us as well. So thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
I have some question for you before we start. What did you work in the last week or weeks? How was your last weeks, Ayush?
It's been a bit busy just trying to get up and running in the new year. I started a new contract just before Christmas, which is like a project to refactor some web pages into using Vue Component and Tailwind. So it's just mainly a modernization project, and we just like setting up just before Christmas, then we took a break. So it's just been a matter of getting up and running with all of that. So yeah, it's been nothing very interesting. It's just some standard boring old refactoring, which is basically, I think 80-90% of the job is boring, but that's what it is.
Okay, thanks. It's pretty different. Like last year, right?
We will lose them.
I think we've lost him. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm correct, right? Oh, seems I lost the connection. It appears for a while.
Yeah, could you repeat the question? We lost you for a bit.
last year you wrote more in terms of creating book, right? And less coding. You did less coding last year. Do you think like this is a good time to get back into more coding activity?
I was still writing code because for the book, I wrote all the code from scratch. Like I had to build the application and then write the chapter in the book that teaches how to build that. So I was still writing code quite a lot. What I wasn't doing was working professionally. Like I'd stopped taking contracts to write. And obviously putting your income on pause. Well, I had bits and pieces of work here and there, but it was like largely my income was on pause for about 8 months. And that's going to take a hit, right?
That's a long time.
Yeah. So right now my focus is just switch gears and earn some money again. So yeah, it's the absolute, that's my focus right now. For now is just do some contract work.
Right.
Okay.
Are you recovering back the money of that hiatus or?
Yeah, so book sales are helping with it's like the sales are slow and steady, which I guess is a good thing. So I wouldn't say I'm at break even point yet, but hopefully with a strong few months I might hit break even and maybe start because break even is just it's a number I've made up in my head because my only investment was my time. So
right.
At some point I'll hit my own personal break even point and then after that it'll be profitable. So hopefully you can get there this year, but I'm not that fast about it.
Okay, we will try to help with it to you.
Even thanks.
We have only limited views and resources right now.
But we will grow, so don't worry. They will come.
Yep. If you build it, they will come, as they say.
Yeah, exactly.
But as you mentioned, 8 months of lack of the income, resigning from the income while you still need to live somehow, and you still need to work. You need to wake up every morning or whatever and sit down and write, even if you don't really want to, you don't have a will. So why did you do it? I mean, what drove you to start such a big project being so short in the Ruby community? Because this is pretty crazy. When I heard that you already have few years in Android development, but you just joined the Ruby community 2 years ago, and 1 year of 2 years was writing a book. This is just amazing. So what was your motivation and the reason? Why did you do it?
I don't know. Insanity, I think, is probably the best way to describe it. Yeah, I don't know. It was in every logical regard, it was a stupid decision, and that's probably what motivated me to do it because I don't like doing safe things. I like doing things that are like off the beaten path, things that are slightly mad, things slightly out there. So the idea actually popped into my head in mid-2021 because I thought my experience was quite unique in the fact that I have specialized in Android, iOS, and web at different points in my career. Okay, granted, my Android knowledge is seriously out of date. My iOS knowledge is also quite out of date. But I have that background. It's there in my brain somewhere. And Turbo Links native, when that was still a thing before Turbo came out, that had been on my radar for a number of years. And I never really got to play with it as such because I worked in a team of native developers, and native developers hate anything to do with hybrid. Like I tried to propose like experimenting with Turbo Links native in my last iOS job. And the moment I said hybrid, I'd lost the room. So that had been on my radar for a while, and then Hotwire and Turbo Native came out, and this idea just popped into my head of, well, maybe I can use my experience here and teach people how to use these tools, because there's not a lot of resources out there for Turbo Native, especially on Android. And one of the things I struggled with when starting with Rails was where to go after Michael Hartle's Ruby on Rails tutorial. Like, I think that book's a rite of passage for all Rails developers. So I did that. And I'm like, okay, where do I go from here? And then my first contract job, and it was I think a 2 or 3 month stint, and my learning curve in that was vertical. Like the amount of sheer learnings in that short space of time was just mad. And I thought maybe I can use this to write a spiritual sequel to Michael Hartle's Ruby on Rails tutorial. And I really wanted to kind of sell a product as well, because I didn't want to be 100% reliant on services. So initially I tried building a SaaS app. I tried to build a blogging app, didn't go anywhere. I knew that SaaS subscriptions are really hard to sell. So I was kind of I was on the lookout for another idea. And then when this popped into my head, I'm like, okay, this is going to be really hard, but I don't think there's anything else like it out there. It's going to be completely unique, and books are a relatively easier sell than SaaS subscriptions. So I thought I'll give it a go and see what happens. Worst case, I invest 6 to 8 months of my life and it gets a modest number of sales, but it acts as a portfolio piece. If I'm looking for contract work, I can just say, oh yeah, I wrote this book, I can help you do A, B, and C. So I thought, well, I'll give it a go, see what happens really. And the reason it actually took so long, as the thing you touched on, Seb, was that I had to wake up and I had to work without without anything that's kind of pushing me to do it. There were no consequences to me not working. I could very easily just say, oh, I'll take today off, and the consequences would be long term. There'd be nothing in the short term because I'm not accountable to anyone. And that happened quite a lot through the summer, especially because I'm a big cricket fan. And when the English cricket season started, for those of you who don't know what cricket is, it lasts 5 days. So it goes on and on and on and on. Right. And I'm like, I don't feel like working. I'm just going to sit in front of the TV and watch cricket all day. And that's why the book took so long. I wanted to get it out in the middle of the summer. It came out on 15 December.
I totally agree. When I recorded my Rails API course on Udemy, it was pretty much similar. No consequences mean that I wake up and today I first drink a coffee, then do some exercises, then some kids, then some, walk, then some reading and playing Minecraft, and time just flew. And it could be faster, and could be done faster, definitely. Yeah. But if you have already something out there, already something published, it is a huge time saver, because you can just when you are doing recruitment, you can just use it as a background that something in this particular field. You can reduce the length of the hiring process. You can even teach your teammates by just sending them to particular chapters of your book or course. And if you have something to sell, in my experience, I think that if you have something to build around, if you have any product to sell, you can build a lot of things around, and it's easier to sell that. It's easier to sell even content subscriptions like courses or ongoing premium subscriptions if you already have something out there to try out. So could be that it will benefit way more in the future when we will build another ideas around this already created one.
Yeah, but it's a long-term commitment, and usually you say you have nothing happens if you don't work a day, but long-term it does, and that's very difficult to see sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but it's my intentions with the book was like everything you said, and it's very much a long-term play. I plan on keeping it updated with Rails updates, and I hope that it can be like a springboard for other things, like maybe just freelance services or maybe other products I might launch in the future. So it was, I think, maybe a very ambitious first project. I've had to do it again. I don't know, maybe I'll try something smaller, but then, like I said, I'm slightly mad, so I might just do it again. Because I have another much smaller book idea, which I decided to shelve in favor of this. I think if I had to do it again, I probably would still do it this way. Partly also because like accumulating quite a bit of Rails knowledge just while working, like things like how active storage, action text, all this stuff works under the hood. Like when you have a feature to build and you got to do something that's a bit more advanced than the normal use case, you have to start diving into source code and understanding how stuff works under the hood. And I knew that I would forget all that stuff because that's not stuff you do every day. So by kind of immortalizing it in the book, now it's actually a really good reference for me to just go back and see, oh, how does this stuff work? Because there's no way I'm going to remember it.
Yeah, and you have to revise it every once in a while if you want to keep it up to date.
Yeah.
You'll have to remember it every time.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've already got a list of like 4 or 5 things that I need to change for Rails 7.1 when it comes out. So it's a good way to just kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening in Rails. Is I need to keep the book up to date. It's like it's my pride and joy. I can't let it just languish.
Now it will be even easier because community you build around your book will reach out to you and say that something is outdated pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I was really, really thorough with proofreading it, editing it, and that kind of stuff. But still, within the first week of release, I had people writing and pointing out typos and stuff. And I'd missed a version of Xcode. So there was a new version of Xcode out, which I hadn't installed, which changed some of the stuff. So I had someone write and saying your screenshots are out of date. So I fixed all that. It was great because I love all that because that shows that people are reading the book. They're reading it, they're getting value out of it. And it was really fulfilling how quickly that I was starting to get emails from people pointing out these things. And it was like that kind of made me more happy about the investment I'd put in for over the last 8 months than like any sales numbers or anything. It's just the people writing and saying how much value they found in it. That was really cool.
Awesome. It is amazing to hear. And you already mentioned that you struggled with some day off because of no consequences, right? But at the end, you did pull it together, and within more or less 1 year, this is, I would say this is an achievement. This is like 70 pages per month of technical content written, which is for me as a content creator, this is pretty neat. So would you have any tips for junior, mid, maybe some more advanced developers as well, but who would maybe consider writing a book, but they are afraid that they will not find a time to do it aside of their jobs and families? What were key reasons, maybe key decisions, key habits you had that made this possible and delivered at the end?
It's tricky because this kind of stuff is quite personal. So like anything I say, it may not apply to someone else. So all I can tell you is like what I did that kind of motivated me to finish it. So like at this point, I know I operate, like I know how my brain works. So I know how to kind of manipulate myself, if that makes any sense, into like working. So like when I knew that if I just write side by side with contracting, I would not make a lot of progress because when I finish my paid work, even if it's not like a full-time contract, if I'm doing like 4 hours a day or something, once I finish that, I'll be too tired to put in the effort for the book. I knew that about myself. And I also knew that I have a colossal ego in the sense that once I start something, I have to finish it. Like a lot of people, when they start projects, they find it hard to finish them. I don't have a lot of ideas and I don't have a lot of good ideas. I knew this was a really good idea and I don't have a lot of them. So anything I start, my ego drives me to finish it. So when I decided to take a break from contracting and write the book full time until it was done, I knew that my ego is too massive for me to abandon this project once I'd got started with it. So once I started writing, the only real thing was, okay, how long is my runway? How long can I go before I run out of money? And like I said, because a lot of the time I wasn't motivated, everything just took a lot longer. And then around September time, I found myself running out of money and still having, I think, a quarter of the book left to write. So that was when I really had a fire lit under my ass. And I started contracting and I started writing side by side as well. So September to December was unbelievably exhausting because I was working evenings, weekends, stupid hours, stuff that I never ever do, stuff I promised myself I would never do. I said I only have myself to blame because if I'd worked properly through the summer, I wouldn't have to do this. And I knew it was short term and I knew it's on my own terms. I'm doing it for myself. I'm not doing it for an employer. So that kind of got me through that. And since that, I've taken my foot off the accelerator. I haven't looked at the book for 3 weeks now, and I don't plan on looking at it for a while. I just need a break from the project because I think I've corrected a lot of errors. I think it's in a pretty stable place for a while. That kind of got me through it till the book was completed. But for like other people, it's tricky because if you have a full-time job and finding the energy to write on top of already working 8 hours a day or whatever, it's hard. I did that for a number of years when I was working on my own projects side by side with a full-time job. And it was too exhausting. So in 2017, I promised myself I'm not programming outside of work. Any programming I do is part of my job. And because I'm freelance now, like I control my own hours. So like even my open source contributions and all that stuff, it falls under my work hours. And once I'm done with work, I don't think about code anymore. So it's tricky to kind of advise what other people should do. Is only they know what themselves the best. So the only thing I can say is that if you want to write a book or build any project, like make sure you do it for the right reasons. Do it because you want to. Like finishing that project should be the reward. The monetary gains should not be the reward. That should be a side effect. Like throughout the whole writing process, my mind was that the moment I release this book, that to me is success. That's done. Like, I don't care if like just my friends buy it. 10 sales in its lifetime. And like, I do not care if that happens. I've got the book out. That to me is success. So I think that applies to any project that you kind of come up with and work on. It's just the process is more important than the result.
I already confirmed. I already looked at this in the same way. I reached out to you to invite you to the show because you completed the project, and I did not even ask about the sales or anything like that. It was so cool that you achieved and released a book that it was your experience. It was amazing. And how old are you, if I can ask? You don't need to answer.
It's fine. I'm 31.
21? 31. Oh, high five. Yeah, well, so it's important that you mentioned that in the earlier when you were a little bit younger, you had power and a will to pull projects side by side. And I find myself in the similar situation when I'm getting older. Every year, I have less energy to drive projects side by side. And I'm looking for ways to do kind of like dedicated period in the year or in the month that I can just focus on one thing and then switch to the next one, because this context switching is kind of exhausting.
Yeah.
So thanks very much for mentioning it. And the other thing that you mentioned that I really enjoy and think it's valuable is this self-awareness of how your brain works and how your body works as well. So, for example, if you don't like working in the evening and you are planning a huge project when by default you will need to work in the evening, this could be just too much and could not work out at all. So getting a few minutes to think how your brain operates is amazing skill, and I'm super glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah, and it's a skill that everyone has.
Yeah, I think it's certainly something I've developed over the years. Again, it's a tricky thing because I can't really give any actionable advice or anything. It's just a skill that I've kind of learned. Because I think it's really important to know how you operate, because there's no point doing things because like the world tells you to do them. I think it's quite important to find your direction more internally, and like knowing how your brain and your body operates is like almost an essential first step to doing that.
Yeah. It happens what happens to me all the time. which is you start the project and then you realize it's not something I could achieve, and you left it on the side.
Yeah. Yeah, it happens to the best of us. I think some projects, when you start them, you're like, maybe I'm not as interested in this as I initially thought I was.
Yeah.
And that's fine. It's just the natural course of things. Like there's a lot to learn even in abandoned projects.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But definitely agree. And I'm not a person that hates to start a project, and even if it's not super great. I mean, if something isn't great, I don't have a blocker to just stop it anymore. I had that in the past for sure. And even if something was not working at all, I still pushed it so hard because my ego did not allow me to stop, as you described, pretty detailed. But I guess not anymore. I kind of learned that it's nice to know where to put your effort and to have the skill to stop project is also a skill, right? To close project. And I think this is a pretty important one, but I'm super glad that you didn't stop.
Yeah.
So it's a while already until it had been released. It had been released in December, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, it's like almost exactly 1 month, 1 month and 1 day.
We are recording it in January 2023, but it will be published as podcast with some sort of, however, do you want to share with us some immediate benefit, immediate back also you got from your first month or after publishing your book? Maybe share some numbers of the sales if that is something you would like to share, because we would like to inspire other people to write such technical books for developers, to bring more content to the Ruby community, more. So I'm trying to ask authors, casters, screencasters, like everybody about some numbers, some insights, if possible, for inspiration.
Yeah, sure. So feedback has been believably positive. Like, honestly, I was expecting more criticism than I've received because the book's pretty opinionated. Like, I go pretty full on with the approach of using things like concerns rather than service objects and things like that. Like, there's a lot of stuff in there that's pretty opinionated, but it's opinionated in a way that I don't force it on the reader. I say that, like, this is how I do it. I want you to, like, figure out your own way. So I hope I'm not shoving it down their throat. But even so, it is opinionated, and I was expecting some people to criticize that quite heavily, and that hasn't happened, which is pretty mad, to be honest. It's been pretty universally positive across the board. Like, I've got a couple of testimonials up on the book's website, which was just messages that people I'd not interacted with before writing in and saying these nice things about the book, and it was very, very fulfilling. I was so pleased that in such a short time, people were already, like, finding value, and they were like, people were like several chapters in within like 2 or 3 weeks, and that was it was just great to see people actually reading the book and so much so quickly. I don't want to share exact sales figures just because I'm not comfortable doing it. In the past, when other creators have done it, I've just kind of felt a bit intimidated because of how easy they made it sound. Like, oh, I just wrote this and I've got X number of sales. Like, it's not easy. It's a really, really, really hard thing to do. And just because, like, it went a certain way for my product, it doesn't mean that it would go the same way for someone else's product. So what I can say is that the sales have been enough to top up my income. That they're not enough to, like, live on or anything. It's a nice bonus to have on top of contracting. If anyone is thinking of writing a book and wants a rough idea of the economics of the thing, email me. I'll share some more details privately, but I prefer not to in like a public setting.
Awesome. That is a very valuable insight and commission. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Can you share the email with us later on?
Yeah, if you want to just add my email address to the description or whatever, then people can write in. And if you want to know what my sales are like, I'll email them to you.
Awesome.
Excellent. Coming back to the feedback question, I think what you said was talking in terms of inspiring other other developers to write a book. That's a very good point that you said there. We are used to entering Twitter and some other places where, or reading the YouTube comments and things like that, where you have a lot of pushback. But yeah, the world isn't as scary as we set out to, as we expect sometimes. If people find your work what interesting, they will thank you, they will be grateful, they will be good to you. So it's a very good point to drive home. I've had some issues when I set out to, I don't know, write something, and sometimes I stopped because I was expecting bad repercussions, and it's not always like that.
Yeah, so, it's quite hard to get past that negative mindset sometimes. Like,
yes.
Even I struggled with it while writing because like I said, I was expecting more criticism, and that never panned out. And while I was writing, I was like, should I be this opinionated? Maybe I should back off. But then I'm like, no, this is my book. I want to do it my way. And I just focused on the process again. Try to stop thinking about what happens after it comes out. Let that take care of itself.
Yeah. And even then, if your problem is, should I be so opinionated or should I phrase things like so and so, you can always come back and update your product to fit it. So
absolutely, it's
very rare that people will actually come back at you in a very bad mood and say, "Hey, I bought this and I didn't like it." It's very hard that
yeah, that's very true. I think sometimes our brains can just amplify the negative a lot more than the positive. And
yes,
that's another skill that you kind of have to learn how to manage that.
Yeah,
I also agree with this one. Even though I experience a lot of positive feedback, and at this point, I already know that what we do here is valuable for others. Sometimes there is just one action one day that you see some bad comment or not even this, like a sales drop or view drop or whatever. A few people unsubscribe from the newsletter, and your mean already goes down. And it's just how organism work. I think there is no way that people, like healthy people, can just go past that. The clue here is to not stick with those feelings. Just leave, let them to flow and flow away pretty quickly. And maybe this is the key, but I constantly experience that. So tip to our listeners and viewers, because the feedback is extremely valuable to authors of any sort. If you are using a great Ruby or other open source gem or project, or you have read the book or article, don't hesitate to reach out to author and just say them a few good words or bad words, but in this manner, both are very, very, very much appreciated. Very valuable for sure.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Like the people writing in has been way more, that's made me way happier than the sales numbers. Like I'd much appreciate just someone writing and saying how much they found the book useful. It's really great to hear from folks.
I also appreciated, I still remember first person that just forked Hanami Master and not only reported a typo, but just went through the article and fixed few typos in the article while also fixing the script, because one example of Ruby code was in up, and it was so fascinating, so much for me. Not the time I saved by doing this alone, but just appreciating that this person took his time to fork my repository and updated my work, like improved it, like contributed to my work. So evaluated that it's valuable to him enough to spend the time and contribute back. This was amazing. And I still remember that. So such small actions sometimes are just priceless. So thanks everyone.
Yeah, that's absolutely
true. Then I have one more question about how are your next plans? Because you already mentioned how you managed your time during the content creation last year, and now you are alternating your work to do some more contracting. What are your next plans then? After you will rest a little bit, do you have any concrete plans for your near future?
Yeah. So another thing I kind of decided at the start of last year actually is that any contract work I'm going to do is going to be capped at 20 hours a week. I can make the numbers work with that much income. So that, and I don't want to work 40 hours. It's too much, it's too exhausting. So that gives me a few hours on top of that to like work on side projects and stuff. And I have some things this year that I want to do. Like I run another SaaS app called Scattergun. It's at scattergun.email. It's a mailing list platform, very simple and privacy-focused mailing list platform. I had to pause sign-ups on that temporarily because my accountant wants me to move to a merchant of record rather than using Stripe because of VAT and boring sales tax nonsense. So I had to pause sign-ups until I can do that. So that's 30. I need to get that done, move that to either Paddle or Lemon Squeezy or something or other. I need to research that as well. That's one thing. I'm planning on writing a conference talk based on some stuff from the book. It'll be focused around hybrid native apps approach of Turbo Native. I have a few ideas, but I haven't written it yet. So I'll write that and then try giving that on meetups and apply to RailsConf and stuff like that. And just add a few more features to Scattergun because it's been live for about 14, 15 months because my focus has been on the book. It's in very much need of some love. I need to just build out a few more features and then hopefully push the marketing a little bit more, get some users. So that's pretty much my plan for this year. Just take the foot off the accelerator a little bit and just focus on these small things with no deadlines. That's the most important thing. With the book, I had a hard deadline of like end of the year because I'd run out of money. But this year I'm going to do things a bit more sustainably, keep my contract work going as long as I can.
Awesome. I will add those links you mentioned in the description note. So you can, our listeners, you can browse them, check them out after the episode or even now. So feel free to do so. Thank you very much. Before the end, because I don't have more questions, but how people could reach out to you in the best way?
So I'm pretty active on Mastodon these days. So I'm on ruby.social. So it's at ayush@ruby.social. You can put the link in the description. I still have a Twitter account, although I don't really use it that much. So if you get in touch with me on there, I may or may not reply. Mastodon's best. But if you're curious, I'm at AyushN21 on Twitter. And email is probably the most reliable way, to be honest, at radioactivetoy.tech. Because I will definitely respond. I might just be a bit slow with it. But with email, I won't lose track of your message. That's the most important thing. So those are either Mastodon or email, I think, are the best ways to reach out.
In the current days, maybe current era of being just overwhelmed by notifications of any sort, emails are still the last stand of tracking who writes to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I love email. Like, I know I get the bad rap, but I kind of have an OCD of unread emails. Like, I can't have unread emails in my inbox. It will drive me nuts. So I have an industrial strength set of filters. If something makes it into my inbox, it means it's important. So that's how I don't lose track of stuff. So for me, it's still the best way to communicate. I prefer long form writing anyway, so like the instant messaging stuff is fine for some contexts, but as you can probably tell from the fact that I wrote a book, that long form writing is my preferred way to communicate. So still a big fan of email.
Oh, another similar activity. I even write handwritten letters to my wife. So I also love long form writing for sure. Anyway, Federico, do you have more questions?
Not questions. I would like to talk a bit about Bridgetown because that's a project I find interesting, and you're on the core of Bridgetown.
Yeah.
What drives you to contribute to Bridgetown?
So I actually stumbled upon it rather by accident in 2020. I think I was reading Jared White, who started the project. I was reading his blog. He used to write a blog on Ruby 3, which has now been rebranded to Full Stack Ruby. And I was reading, and the blog post mentioned Bridgetown, and I'm like, okay, what the hell is Bridgetown? So I put it into search, and I was like, oh, okay, it's some static site generator. At the time, the upsell was it had Webpack integrated into it, and it was forked from Jekyll. That was like the upsell on the homepage. So I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm happy with Jekyll, and I kind of parked it in my mind. Fast forward a month or two, and I was trying to integrate Webpack into Jekyll and pulling my hair out and losing my sanity. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I remember reading about this thing, Bridgetown, that had it done by default. Let me go see what that is. So I installed it and I started playing around with it. And that was the project was still very much in its infancy at the time. I think it was maybe 6 months old. So there were a lot of rough edges. And I set it up. I did quite a customized setup for my own, like based on my own preferences. And I wrote a blog post about what the customizations I'd done. And then I posted that blog post on the Bridgetown community. I think they're still using Discourse at the time. And I said, I've done all this stuff. If you guys want me to PR any of this upstream, just let me know. I'm happy to contribute. And Jared got back to me saying like, oh, A, B, and C is really cool. If you want to create PRs for those, I'd really appreciate it. And that was it. I contributed a few features. I got involved in some discussions on GitHub issues and stuff. It was very much an organic thing. I wasn't trying to be part of the project. It was just, oh, here's something cool. I have opinions. These people sound like really cool guys. I want to have a chat with them. And we just discussed stuff. And I guess Jared was impressed enough with my contributions that he invited me to join the core team. And I made a few more contributions since then. It's been on the back burner for a while again because my focus was 100% on the book. But I published a bunch of plugins and stuff. I'm still pretty active in the Bridgetown Discord. It's been great for me personally as a foothold in the Ruby community because I think, like Seth mentioned right at the start of this chat, that I haven't been part of the Ruby community for that long. And I think getting invited to join the Bridgetown core team it kind of gave me a foothold. And that was actually one of the things that gave me a little bit of confidence that if I wrote this book and released it, that the word of mouth I could get the word of mouth going because I had a little bit of a foothold by being on the Bridgetown core team. So I'm eternally grateful to Jared for inviting me to join. And actually, that's another thing for this year is I want to contribute back into the project a bit more because I don't think I did anything last year, which is not good. I love the project and I want to contribute back into it. So definitely going to make some more time this year to do that.
That's great. Thank you, because it's a great project. I really like it.
Well, thanks.
Did you give a talk? Did you give a talk in the conference, in the Bridgetown conference?
Yeah, I did.
I think that's why I remembered you, because I watched the conference, but as a side thing, because I discovered it a day before, I think.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't have plans to watch it. So I could watch some talks, and yeah, your name sounded familiar from that.
That's cool. So at least the talk wasn't a complete disaster then if you actually remembered my name. But the talk, it's on the Bridgetown website if you want to give it a go. I think I was quite happy with the way it turned out, to be honest. Hopefully, we'll hopefully try to do something like that again this year. I know Jared has some plans to just be a little bit more, to have a little bit more engagement with the community. So hopefully we'll do some more of that kind of stuff this year.
Excellent. Okay, that's it for me.
Okay, so I have one more question. Do you have any other book that you would recommend that you had read late except your one?
Technical book or just any book?
Well, maybe preferable technical or content creation, like writing, business or self-development, whatever. But anything, really. Just what sticks to your mind.
There is a book, I haven't finished it yet, but I'm in the process of reading it. It's called Deployment from Scratch by Joseph. I can't pronounce his last name, so I don't want to butcher it. But if you Google Deployment from Scratch, I'm sure you'll find it.
I will add it to the note.
Yeah, and I think I'm only like maybe a few chapters in, but it's really helpful because it kind of teaches you how to deploy Rails apps to VPS. And that can be for like low traffic projects, that can be super useful because you could deploy your app to a $5 a month DigitalOcean droplet instead of like my personal favorite hosting provider is Render. But if you're going to deploy a Rails app to Render, you're going to need a web service, a background job service, a database, and a Redis service. And that's going to cost you about $28 to $30 a month, which is cheap for most projects. But if it's like just some like your own blog or something like that, you don't want to be paying that much. And I think the ability to deploy to a $5 a month droplet, I think, is a great tool to have in your drawer. And this book teaches you everything you need to know for that.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So that's all from my side too. So thank you very much. Or maybe not yet. Not yet. Do you have anything else that you would like to ask us before we end?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything we discussed beforehand. So
amazing. So thank you very much for attending to the show, coming here. It was a blast. It was amazing to talk to you, and it was very much inspiring. So I hope we will stay in contact and we will reach out to each other again. Thank you all for listening. It was amazing, and see you in the next.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Great chatting with you guys as well. Take care.
Bye.
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 Thanks a lot.